Welcome. I'm running with that theme. So, for any of you that don't know, we're going to be talking about Resident Evil Death Island in a bit, but I am from South London, and I do like a bit of a Cockney accent. I do love trying to imitate the Merchant. He's one of my favourite characters. But anyway, Resident Evil Death Island, let's get into it. So, Resident Evil Death Island, there's a new trailer. You're going to see some footage here, and also I'm going to intersperse that with some of my Resident Evil 4 gameplay playthrough. Absolutely love Resident Evil 4. Go and watch my review if you haven't. But yeah, you can get my thoughts on it. I thought the Resident Evil 4 remake was really, really good. So, anyway. Resident Evil Death Island is the continuation of the CG series of films and also the series on Netflix. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of Vendetta, and I wasn't the biggest fan of the series, even less so of the series that was on Netflix, the CG series. I forget what it's called, but yeah, just wasn't a huge fan of it. This film is doing some things that are pretty impressive in terms of lore and canon and what fans want to see. It's definitely giving fans a lot of fan service. We're basically getting all the characters meeting up and coming together. And while it is kind of hokey and a bit cheesy, I think for fans who don't take it super serious, I think it's going to be, a big thing. So the plot summary for the new film is it takes place on Alcatraz for part of it, and then there's some other locations here and there. Maria Gomez is back from Vendetta, because we see at the end of Vendetta she survives, and I think she's trading the virus that she stole, or whatever. I don't know if she's going to play a bigger part in it, or she's just sort of cameoing and it's continuing on from Vendetta. I'm not too sure about that, but I do know that Capcom do want to sort of tie their continuity together a little bit better, which they've done with the recent remakes. As much as I don't like Resident Evil 3 Remake, the fact that it ties into RE4 Remake and RE2 Remake, and they all sort of tie into each other, is like a big deal for me. It's really cool. Like, as a fan, other than the original trilogy, having the games now connect and the continuity be a bit better and the lore be a bit more fleshed out is something that I've always kind of wanted, sort of going from Code Veronica onwards, and we didn't really get that. It was just all over the place, and just plot lines went crazy, and just the games were so different sometimes, things like that. So I'm really happy about that. I'm happy that the CG films are connecting to each other, and that's something that brings me back to want to watch these new films and continuing films. So it takes place after Resident Evil 6, but before Resident Evil 7, and it also takes place after Vendetta, obviously. And it does star Chris, it does star Leon, it stars Jill, Rebecca and Claire. And if you've watched the trailer, which I'm sure, if you're here watching this video, then you've already seen the trailer. If you've watched it, Jill and Leon have a knife fight, which I think is super cool. After seeing him and Krauser's knife fight in RE4 Remake, I just like the fact that they're having close quarters knife fights all the time. I think that's really cool. Knives have always played like a massive role in the Resident Evil series, so it's cool to see them doing this like knife combat stuff, close quarters combat. It's very, very cool. So yeah, those two meet in a sewer, and then they're quickly set upon by this new variant of a liquor. It kind of looks more like the old school liquors as opposed to the hench buff ones from Damnation and Resident Evil 5. So that's really cool, but it has some differences. It has some sort of extra shit on it that is new to that liquor design. So yeah, very, very cool. We see some, like from the original trailer, swim out of this cage underwater. So they're obviously liquors that are designed to swim and go underwater. So that's pretty cool. We get a look at like these whale type BOWs, and also a look at what looks like a shark type BOW, although it might be the same one, and they look to be the ones that emit the virus, this new virus, and it's purple and airborne. That's another thing, it's airborne. So the new bad guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, I forget, but he's a bit generic looking. I don't think they've ever bettered for the CG films the bad guys after Curtis from Degeneration. I think he was a really good bad guy, and I don't think they've bettered the bad guys in the CG films since him. Glenn Arias was just way over the top, and I like Diego, who I forget the brother of Maria, but anyway, I think Curtis was the best one, because I felt this kind of like, I felt this kind of understanding for his character, the fact that he lost his family in Raccoon City, and he just was pissed off at the world, and he transformed much like Birkin did. He was kind of like Birkin in similar ways, but he was a better person before that, as opposed to Birkin. But yeah, I really like Curtis. This new guy, like I said, he looks a bit generic. But Jill seems to know him because she says his name during the trailer, so I ain't got a clue about that really. But yeah, he just looked a bit generic, so we'll have to see. Other than seeing the main villain and also the two species of bioweapons that we get to see in the film, we don't really get to see anything else. Obviously, we see zombies, which is a given. It's Resident Evil, so the zombies attack the group in Alcatraz. But what really caught my attention and had me quite excited is the callbacks to Raccoon City, to the Raccoon City disaster. And we get to see all these Umbrella soldiers kind of in the city and fighting zombies and stuff and getting overrun. And one of them is just like, on the floor in a fetal position. And I'm not too sure whether that is actually the main bad guy and he was an Umbrella soldier. Who knows? It's quite interesting. But recently, Resident Evil 4 Remake tied the canon together from the other remakes and tied some things together. I'm not going to spoil it, I'm not going to say, I don't want to ruin it because it's a big reveal definitely for fans, but it was really cool the way they did that, and with a certain character. It not only made sense, but it gave him a lot better backstory and lore. You might guess it yourselves, but yeah. And I think if this new bad guy has ties to Umbrella in the CG film, and there's a reason as to why he's flipped out and he wants to infect the whole world, which is part of the course for most of these villains in the CG films and, in the Resident Evil series. It's going to be quite interesting to see, like, the callbacks, going back in time to see sort of what Umbrella was doing with these soldiers in Raccoon City, because we know the UBCS was there during the outbreak, but these new soldiers almost look like ones from the, I know you're going to shudder at hearing this, but the Anderson films, like Apocalypse to be exact, and also the Extinction, they kind of look like those, but obviously better. Like, it'll be better because it's in a canon CG, like Resident Evil film. So it's interesting. It shows that Umbrella weren't just sending UBCS, in there, and Hunk's team. They're also sending these other sort of like Umbrella soldiers in there. So it's quite interesting. But they get overrun, and they get wiped out. So the callbacks to the Raccoon City disaster is going to be really cool. It's going to be a reason for me definitely to go and watch this, watch this film, or at least go out buy it and watch it, because I don't think it's going to be in every cinema. It's going to be in select cinemas, so maybe ones in London. But overall, yeah, what else? I saw Chris firing a rocket launcher, which filled me with a lot of joy. I was very happy about seeing that. I was like, yeah, that's badass. There's a lot of action, definitely. Some of the action is super OTT, like it's over the top. So you're going to have to just grin and bear it, to be honest with you. If you can turn your brain off and enjoy that sort of action, then you'll definitely get a lot of fun out of this film. I want to touch on that a little bit more later on, but first off, I just want to read off the voice cast for the characters, the returning STARS members, and also Rebecca, Claire, and Leon. So firstly, Mathew Mercer is reprising his role as Leon, and it's not Nick Apostlesides, who has voiced Leon from the RE2 remake to the RE4 remake. So that's quite interesting. Don't know why, but it is what it is. I still like Mathew Mercer, so it's cool. Kevin J. Dorman as Chris. I think he was in Vendetta. He voiced Chris in Vendetta, so he's returning. Erin Cahill as Rebecca. I think that's the same voice actress from Vendetta, but quote me if I'm wrong. We have Nikki Lee Tompkins as Jill. I'm not sure if that's the same voice actress that voiced her in Resident Evil 3 remake, but I think it is. And also, as you can see, her face model is the same as the Resident Evil 3 remake's face model. And we have Steph Panicello as Claire, so I'm guessing she's voicing Claire from the series that was on Netflix. She's returning. So yeah, they're the voice actors. So overall, I think that's all the information we have at the moment. I'm just trying to go back through my brain and think if there's anything else. I don't think there is. I just wanted to touch upon, like I said earlier, the more action-heavy sort of elements of these CG films, and the fact that this just looks absolutely mental and nuts. It looks like the most crazy one so far. I do like the bit at the end where they get more guns and Chris is on the back of a Jeep and he's just pumping rounds out of this massive, heavy machine gun, and Leon's driving the Jeep. Like, that's very, very cool. That's cool stuff. But it reminds me again of Resident Evil 6 where you're fighting the massive bioweapon T-Rex, whatever the fuck that was. So yeah, but there's parts in the film that you get to see where they're doing like backflips and synchronized like acrobatics when they're facing what looks like a massive boss type enemy. And I mean, what do you want me to say? Look, I think that golden era of Resident Evil being survival horror has long since passed. It's long since passed, and we're never going to get that again. They've already rebooted Resident Evil 4, and that's how I think they're going to continue going forward. I don't think we're going to get any more survival horror type Resident Evils like 7 or the Resident Evil 2 remake. I think this is just going to be action heavy like games and CG films and live action films. I think that Capcom have just said, sod it, this is what we're doing now. I think they generally are taking a stand, and this is what they're going to do. I can feel it. So, this is the thing. If you want true survival horror Resident Evils, you've got to go back and play those games. Play the original trilogy. Play the remake on Cube. Just Code Veronica, whatever you can play, the Resident Evil 2 remake, even 7. And I know some people don't like 7, and it gets a bit more action-packed towards the end, but really, for the majority of that game, it is like playing an Evil Dead game. It's like playing an Evil Dead game. That's what's so cool about it. And it is survival horror. There are a lot of survival horror elements in it. If Resident Evil going forward was to be more like the Resident Evil 4 remake, I would be happy with that, because it kind of balances the action and the horror elements quite well. Not as well as the Resident Evil 2 remake, but it does balance it quite well. If that's what they're going for moving forward, then I think if they could just keep that balance going, I'd be happy, and I think a lot of other fans would be happy. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think it's just going to go batshit crazy again, insane, and we're going to get like a bunch of Resident Evil 6s again. This is my worry. I think when it comes to enjoying Resident Evil experiences moving forward, there's two sides of the fence. There's the people that just don't want to know, and they say, well, it's done for me, I'm moving on. And part of me feels like that, definitely. Quite a huge part of me feels like that. And then the other part of me looks at something like Resident Evil 4 remake or Resident Evil 2 remake, and I like what I'm seeing. I enjoyed those games. I enjoyed them as experiences, as games. So that's the thing. Like, Resident Evil fans are super conflicted, definitely. You either don't want to know, or you can still roll with it and still have fun with, some of the games or the CG films, or even parts of that last live action film were decent. So that's where I sit. I sit on that side. I sit on both sides, really. And and I'm always thinking, really, is this what it's become? And then other times I'm like, this looks fun. And so I'm very conflicted. But make no mistake, I'm more of a survival horror fan. I like the traditional Resident Evil, survival horror experience, as opposed to the new action-heavy with horror elements experience that they go for. So that's why I like Resident Evil 2 Remake a lot more than the Resident Evil 4 Remake, because it was more survival horror. And that's where I lean on the side of the fence. Right? But, watching the CG film and just having fun and, and thinking about it in terms of like an anime, I can have fun with this. Do I like the fact they're canon? I don't know. Like, that's I don't know. I'll probably have to say no. From Vendetta onwards, I'd have to say no. I think that Degeneration and Damnation were fine as canon sort of entries into the story and the plot, but realistically, I would have preferred them to be separate, but they are sort of canon. But yeah, I don't know. Vendetta was just, oh my days, it was ridiculous. Like, it was ridiculous. So, I'm sure this is going to have its own moments of silliness. I just don't want to be too negative on it. When I look at it, I can detach myself from it and just, play the original trilogy and or play the remake of 2 or play the remake of the first game on Cube, and I don't connect that or those games with the CG films, the lore of the CG films. But yeah, they are still canon. That's the thing. So I can connect Resident Evil 4, the CG films, and Resident Evil 5 definitely. But anything else, I'm like, really? It's going to go from that to Resident Evil 7, where you play. Well, we already know you play as Ethan, who's just an average Joe in Resident Evil 7. He's not backflipping away from monsters and the rest of it. It feels like it's a completely different canon and series and universe and entry, and then we have Chris Redfield looking completely different at the end. So is this film going to explain who the hell that is? If it's a doppelganger or something? Well, it's not even a doppelganger because he doesn't even look like it. But yeah, so, it's like two completely different universes. That's what it feels like. Yeah, overall, I think the trailer was cool. It's definitely a massive shout to fans. It's got a lot of fan service in it, and I think that is one reason to go buy your ticket if you can find a select cinema that's playing it, or just buy it when it comes out, because that's going to be cool to see all those characters interacting. So I'm quite excited about that, because I genuinely didn't know that Rebecca would be in it. and I didn't know all the characters were going to meet up. I just thought that it'd have Leon, you know, and Jill, but it's actually got Claire and Rebecca added into the cast. So I didn't even know that. A lot of people didn't know that. So that's really, really cool. The fact they're just all meeting up together to take out this massive threat, I think is also very cool. It's kind of like the Resident Evil 6 we wanted instead of the Resident Evil 6 we got. So I could actually take this as like, you know, the true Resident Evil 6 is how it feels to me, even though it takes place after. But yeah, so it looks like a ton of fun. I love all the close quarters knife like fights and stuff. That was really cool, because coming from Resident Evil 4 Remake, you know, and getting to see Leon using the knife and stuff, and the close quarters knife combat he has with Krauser and Ada, yeah, that's really cool. So that has me hyped. And overall, I've got to say, it does look a lot better than Vendetta. It looks a lot better than Vendetta. The story looks a lot better than Vendetta. And yeah, that was a low point, definitely, for the CG films. And also the Netflix series. It looks a lot better than the Netflix series. So yeah, it does look like maybe a cool continuation on from like Damnation. So I'm interested to watch it and see. And I hope they don't, you know, fuck it up. I hope they don't ruin it, to be honest. I hope it's actually really enjoyable. It does have some silly moments, but it outweighs those with some really good moments, you know, some great like little horror moments here and there. So we'll have to see. I'll keep you guys updated with any more news regarding Death Island. I don't think there's going to be much other than the film releasing and getting to watch it and then review it. And when I do, I'll upload that video straight away, and you guys can get my thoughts on it. So that's all the Resident Evil news we've got for this week. Go and watch my Resident Evil 4 Remake review. You know, I give you my thoughts, the good, the bad. You know, did it impress me? Is it a good remake? Is it a fun game at the end of the day? So go over and watch that. And until next time, I've been System Check 66, and I'm signing out. Peace.